oh, well, he wasn't a Hall of Famer in my eyes, or this guy was and this guy wasn't. But, when you actually have to sign your name to something, you do take a closer look. And I have to admit that I was not a huge Scott Rolen fan. Certainly the folks in some cities in the major leagues were not fans of Scott Rolen's. But nevertheless, you take a look at his consistency. You look at how good he was defensively, in addition to the great offensive numbers that he put up. You look at the advanced metrics and wins above replacement, and you add all those things up over his lengthy career. That's a heck of a player. And, in diving in, he didn't, some of the defensive plays maybe wow you, but he wasn't that flashy, didn't call attention to himself. But when you look at all the numbers added up over time, it's like, this guy's, sure, he's a definite Hall of Famer. So every year that I voted, I've checked the box for Scott Rolen, and I'm finally happy to see him get in.
17 seasons, 1997 Rookie of the Year, top 25 MVP voting just 3 times in his career. I mean, 2004, I think, was his best standing. I think he finished 4th. Obviously, Bonds had that monster season. You look at his numbers, over 2,000 hits. I believe 70-something of them came his last season. So 2077, 316 home runs, 281. You can't dismiss the leather. We know that. He played the position brilliantly. I look at his slugging. I look at the OPS. I don't see flashy numbers except for, the gold gloves, the defense. But this is not about my issue with Scott Rolen, right? Because I think a lot of times we look at these guys and people try to make it personal. That's not it. I would say this: if Scott Rolen, by those numbers and by what we believe when we start to break down the sport, your era, the analytics, then explain to me how Graig Nettles is not in the Hall of Fame. Because Graig Nettles, to me, I think he has a couple points higher when it comes to WAR. He led the AL in assists 4 times, AL CS MVP in 81. He single-handedly saved the 78 World Series when the Yanks were down 2 games to 1, close to 400 home runs, 2,225 hits, 2-time Gold Glove. And oh, by the way, he had to deal with one of your guys, the human vacuum cleaner out there in Baltimore for 15 straight years, and Brooks Robinson. And I think one year Aurelio Rodriguez won it for the Tigers, in an era where you also had the Mike Schmitz in the NL, 6-time All-Star, over 300 doubles, I believe. I mean, the numbers to me, an MVP, right? I pulled them up, finished 5th and 6th, 77, 78 respectively. Obviously, Jim Rice was the best player in baseball. We can agree in 1978. But how does a player like Graig Nettles, and you think about those 78, those Yankee teams with Guidry and Catfish and Reggie, and how is he not in the Hall of Fame? And we're going to put Scott Rolen in.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Number one, completely different Baseball Writers Association electorate back then. And, we don't know, or we didn't know, I say we, baseball writers didn't know an awful lot back then about how good players were beyond just their hits, RBIs, and batting average, that sort of thing. We can appreciate what kind of a player Graig Nettles was. We can appreciate what kind of a player Lou Whitaker was, Dwight Evans, Bobby Grich. I mean, a lot of those guys, when you put them up to the sabermetric microscopes, you're looking at guys that would be, I don't know, slam dunks is the right word, but very, very easily getting in, I would think, because of the way that they played the game and what we appreciate now in the total package. So I think you could go back and make a case for a lot of guys, and the case that you just made for Nettles is a great one. And I think maybe we didn't appreciate, because you had Reggie Jackson and all of those guys taking the headlines away from the nuts and bolts guys that kind of held the Yankees teams together.
So when you